Yeah, that's a wizard. 100%.
Calling the game right now. Dressed like the Michelin Man, ready to get my on.
A really good team that shouldn't have been.
7 different teams won conference championships. U of A not one of them. I just wanted to point that out. Welcome everybody to the Sports Experience Podcast. Once again, I am Dom DiTolla sitting alongside Chris Quinn, and today we're back on the soccer pitch.
Yeah, we're talking our first woman soccer player.
Another one for the ladies, everybody. This is going
Yeah.
to be a good one. I'm stoked. And this is really interesting. I mean, I knew who she was, but I just completely don't remember her anymore. And she was, like you said, when you brought her up, arguably one of the best women's soccer players in this country of all time.
Well, that's what she's thought as, is the greatest United States women's soccer player, and she was really ahead of her time. And we're talking about Michelle Akers.
Michelle Akers, that's right.
Yeah.
And let's get it started here. Born February 1st, 1966 in Santa Clara, California, to Robert and Ann Akers, but grew up in a suburb of Seattle.
All right, so let me get in before she moves to Washington.
Yeah.
Because I knew you were going to love this. She was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan.
Was she really?
And when she was like 6, that was what she wanted to do, was play professional football.
Oh, that's
and
badass.
her mom was like, no, you're a girl. We're going to try and get you into Bluebirds, which is like Girl Scouts.
Okay.
She goes, so I got kicked out of Bluebirds for fighting. And then I completely refused to go to ballet. And then when they moved to Washington, they moved to this like soccer community, which are these little pockets in America, which are mainly like suburbs. And she moved there and fell in love with soccer.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, man, she should have been like a kicker in the NFL or something. Just found a way
I'm
onto
gonna get
a roster.
I got a story for that.
I
think I don't got a
read
story
about
for
it.
that?
Yeah. Oh, you got a story for that? But that's great. It's just like, screw this ballet. I'm not pirouetting.
And she loved football. That was the other thing, was like at 6, she probably just didn't understand. And when she found soccer and the ability to really be as athletic as she could, she excelled in it.
And just like the competitive nature of it probably appealed to her, right?
Yep.
Like I would figure like, well, I'll play the other kind of football instead.
No.
But yeah, she was a really great soccer player growing up. And like you said, that's cool that they have those little pockets of like pro soccer communities.
Yeah, because there's like one in Maryland, one in California, and then you'll go through an entire state that really doesn't play soccer, but that's kind of how the United States is. It's, broken up like that. And luckily for her and for us, she moved into one of these communities that really pushes soccer, and that was her sport from then on. So
3-time All-American in high school.
Yep.
I had read. She was also, what's the best way to put it? She was very big for a lady as far as her frame compared to some of the other players.
So she's 5'10".
Yeah.
And she was 5'10" early on, so she was just almost bigger than every other woman out on the field, and
Just mowing people down.
And it really was in her style of being more physical and winning headers, and she really was ahead of her time.
Oh, totally. No, it makes me think of that Mrs. Doubtfire where he's like, man, you're big for a lady. You could play for the 49ers.
Well, so she goes to the University of Central Florida.
Yep. Alma mater of Daniel Tosh.
Yeah.
And Dante Culpepper.
I'll take Tosh.
I'll take Tosh as well.
But she was a 4-time All-American. She was obviously like the best college player kind of around, and definitely the best on her team for years. She was the top scorer in 88. And
School's top athlete that year, too, 88,
and the
89.
school's top athlete. Mm-hmm. And she ended up getting her jersey and number 10 retired by the University of Central Florida. So she was definitely their greatest women's soccer player ever, and probably soccer player ever.
Yeah, probably soccer player in general,
Yeah,
regardless
definitely.
of, which side. But yeah, she won the Herman Trophy in 1988, which is the top college player for soccer.
Yeah.
For everything. So, I mean, she's amazing and has a great career, but I kind of related it to the Ann Myers situation where do you go after that?
What's next?
Yeah, what's
Especially
next
because
after you're so awesome in college? Because, this is still the late 80s, early, as we're heading into the early 90s. There's not the women's sports leagues or opportunities like there are now.
There's barely even international play. So we look at the United States women program actually starts in 85. Mm-hmm. She scores the first goal. So the first game that they ever played, it was a little tourney in Italy. They lost the first game, and then she scores the first goal ever in the second game
Yeah.
in a tie.
Against Denmark.
It's one of those things where she'll have that forever to be our first goal scorer, which is pretty awesome.
Like when you look at the U.S. National team for the women, their record books, almost all the firsts are Michelle Akers.
Yep.
Like almost all of them. She's like basically the Dawn of the whole league.
No,
you know,
yeah.
or the whole program.
But just to point out how little games are being played from 85 to 90. She played in pretty much every game that the United States women's team could play, and she played in 24 games.
Yeah. Scored 15 goals, by the way. So she's a G.
Goals. Here's the other thing, though. She had 9 goals in 6 games in 1990.
Yeah.
So that's when she really started to excel because she was the 1990 Female Athlete of the Year.
Oh, man, that's so cool.
Because she had 9 goals in 6 games, people were like, whoa, that's crazy. In 91, she had
she goes
39 goals in 26 games. And that was what people were saying was this was probably the greatest year that a female soccer player ever had.
Those are some like Pele numbers.
It
Those
was.
are some Zico numbers.
Those are some Messi numbers.
Exactly.
You know? Like, it's pretty wild.
Just a goal scoring machine.
So I'm going to go back. So it was like 89, 90. She meets up in California with the Dallas Cowboys kicking coach.
Yeah.
And he gives her what would be thought of like a tryout. And she says she is ripping them from 30, 40, 50. And the guy is just like, yeah, like if you want to come try out, like we would love to have you as more than just a publicity stunt. And she said the conversation that was about to happen that never happened was, what if I get hit?
Yeah.
And so like he asked her what she felt about it, and she was just like, no, I'm gonna put all my eggs into this soccer thing, that was the other thing, which was like non-existent.
It's risky, and you knew dudes would be gunning for her.
Yes.
But she probably, considering how bad that 88, 89, and even 1990 Cowboys teams were, she could have made that team as a kicker.
Well, this was why because she pretty much was like, no, I understand that these men are twice my size and full of muscle. So like if they were going to hit me, they would hurt me. And like she made that.
You might not play soccer again
Yes.
after that, which is like kind of her main kind of thing to do right at that juncture.
But I thought it was interesting that she kind of got, not like a real tryout, but she kind of got a tryout with a football team and showed that she could rip field goals from all across the field, which is pretty awesome.
Just like sexy Kathy Ireland in North Dallas 40. Sinbad reference. Back to Michelle Akers.
So now we get into the first ever Women's World Cup.
Yeah,
91.
Yeah.
Everybody thought it was weird that China hosted it, but hey, you know what? China hosted it.
Hey, they're hosting probably another one again coming up probably.
Well, it was an interesting one because they didn't. I mean, everybody knows how China feels about women, and everybody thought that the Chinese team was going to be really bad, and they actually came out and they were really good.
The ones that were spared then?
Yes.
God dang.
The only child.
Yes.
So in this 91 World Cup, like I was saying, with the 39 goals, this is the greatest year probably of a female soccer athlete.
Oh, she lit it up in this tournament, dude. She just lit it the hell up.
So I want to get right into the quarterfinals where they play China Taipei. And she has still the record in World Cup, which is five goals in one game. And if you watch these goals, they're not like tap-ins. They're not like bullshit goals.
They're launching them, dude.
Literal volleys from across the 18. And that's why she was so good, was she wasn't just this physical presence. She had all the technique.
She had, there were no holes in her game. There were no weaknesses. And putting it on display like that, that's almost 2 hat tricks in a game.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know what you call that in soccer. That's crazy.
And we get into the finals against Norway. And this is why I brought this up on, I think, multiple episodes, where in soccer they give the golden boots before the championship game. Yeah. So Akers ends up not being the most valuable player of this tournament, even though in the finals against Norway,
scores both goals.
She scores both of our goals.
2-1 win.
10 goals in the World Cup in 5 games. And she is this is what people were saying, was she was such a, not only like a focal point for the offense, but like really the engine, like kind of going back and everything. She's did everything.
Money player, man.
Yeah.
You know where the ball's going.
She's the
when
money
they take
player.
The pitch. That's right. You want to talk about her position change after the tournament?
So this is the other thing, because
I figured you could speak more to it than I could.
Well, she was getting sniped a lot as a striker, and she was also probably her best position would have been number 10, that central midfielder, because of her size and because of her technique. That's what everybody kind of says, is she's looked at as this physical player, but man, she was so great on the ball and defending. So I feel like it was both of like, hey, I'm getting injured too much and I'm going to be better in the midfield, because there was also a bunch of younger female strikers coming up.
Exactly, yeah. So make your team better in 2 positions as opposed to just 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we see, because she's constantly being hampered with injuries. I'll say this. It's constant throughout her career.
They're trying to take her out. Not cool.
The 95 World Cup, and I'm going to bring this up later. The 95 World Cup, she suffers a concussion, which they really don't have any concussion protocols, and they really let her right back in. I think the next game was like 4 days.
Here's some smelling salts. Go out there.
Yes. I think she came back out on the pitch that game, and she had a bunch of knee problems too.
Yeah.
So it was like
she had multiple surgeries on her knees too, which obviously for soccer you think of, because like, yeah, your legs are going to get taken out. But like, this is when we kind of first start seeing concussions as a part of soccer, and CTE is
especially
maybe a
with
part
her.
of soccer. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and she's moved back into the midfield. She's doing a lot more headers. And in 95, we end up losing to Norway in the semifinals, which I want to say this, U.S., Norway, women's soccer throughout the 90s, early 2000s was probably the best rivalry in this soccer, because literally
really cool, man.
It was them beating us or us beating them for championships. So
come on, we're going to take you out, you Viking ladies.
Oh, and they so were just a bunch of blondes running around. You're like, I don't know who that is.
But they get some revenge in the upcoming Olympics, though.
So this is something that I love, is the 96 Olympics in Atlanta. This is when the women's soccer really becomes on the world stage.
And it's cool because it's in the United States, so like it's not in a foreign country where Americans maybe aren't paying attention because the game's on at like 2 a.m. or whatever, or 3 a.m. This is like Eastern time zone, Atlanta, on full display. All the media companies like, hey, let's pipe up this nationalism and root for these ladies.
And it was full stadiums too. That was the other thing that they were saying, was like, this is when it was really embraced, and the video coverage, because the United States just had better video coverage than 91 China, just was that much better.
Just
and it
some
was
grainy
like,
communist
it really was.
TV in black and white.
So the 91 World Cup was really hard to watch if you were not really in the circle of, like fucking ESPN Ocho.
Yeah, right.
You know what
It's
I mean? Like that's where they
91,
were at.
it's more of a niche sport, but you see by like 95, 96, it's becoming less of a niche sport and more like, it's on NBC in prime time.
Yes.
And who's building all of this and all this popularity? Michelle Akers is.
So she comes into, and this is where I want to talk about this, because we were talking about this before we started the podcast, is her hairstyle is
amazing.
It's just so readily identifiable.
It's like if Jaromir Jagr's hair from the early 90s Pens had a baby with Weird Al's hair circa 1986.
Yeah. And I'll say this.
It's happening, bro.
It's very, like, it doesn't move either. It's very much like a hair helmet.
It's like Dion's Jerry curl from back in the day. That's what it's, that's exactly what it's like, because it didn't move.
No. And it's one of the best hairstyles, probably worse too, in all of women's soccer, but it's very much her. Like, you see it and you're like, oh, that's Michelle Akers.
It's easily identifiable. It's like Bob Ross's afro.
Yeah.
It's like you, now she can't get, I wonder if she was ever like, can I just get like something more modern? But it's like, no, we won't know who it is unless we see the number, right?
Yeah, that's very true.
I mean, you can't get rid of it. Happy soccer and God bless.
So going into this 96 World Cup, she has a torn MCL.
Which is insane that she's even playing on it and gutting it out.
This is why she was so good, is that she couldn't make those long or those in box sprints, so they put her in defensive midfield, and she essentially locks the game up and is running our defense and is really distributing the ball. If you watch this 96 World Cup, is where you could see Michelle Akers is that much better because she's not on the offensive side and she's still dominating.
It's almost like Franz Beckenbauer.
It is 100%
Just like you lose.
You lose the blanket. It's like, oh, man.
But yeah, they end up winning the gold medal
Yep.
in 1996. So it's pretty darn incredible for them to pull that off.
It's this run of this U.S. soccer that has cemented this, thing that like everybody looks at U.S. women's soccer now, and
They're
in
the
this
dominant
era-
force in women's
Yeah.
soccer, and this is the beginning of it. And
This was-
that's
yeah.
why it's more important now than, and not to say anything against the recent World Cups and Olympics wins for the U.S. women's team, but like there would be none of that without people like a Michelle Akers.
Yes.
It wouldn't exist, pretty much.
More so than just U.S. soccer too. I feel like
soccer
all
in
over.
general.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the women's team at this time was still really awesome. So
Yep.
it's like you're encouraging not only girls here to play, but if anyone in the foreign countries who the U.S. is either beating or playing against, they're like, oh, maybe I could do this too.
Yeah,
which is pretty
it
sweet.
really opened this world up for women in sports, and we see them win the '98 Goodwill Games too.
Yeah. Won the 98 Goodwill Games. And in June 7th, 1998, I wanted to add, she was awarded the FIFA Order of Merit, which I guess is like the highest honor you can attain in international soccer, I think.
First woman to ever win it.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And
God
that's
dang.
why people like were recognizing like, yes, she is playing soccer like at this high level for like a decade.
And
So,
she's recognizable, and she's really good.
yeah. So then we get into the '99 World Cup, which I feel like everybody
The most famous kind, I think,
Yes.
women's World Cup, at least for America, but
Yes.
probably for the world, I would
Yes.
say.
Mia Hamm and Brandy Chastain.
Take that
and-
shirt off. No.
Yep. Rip it off.
Rip it off.
And that's the thing is, in this, she's also pulled back in the midfield because they have all these really strong strikers throughout this '99 World Cup. But really, if you watch these games, she is like commanding this team.
Yeah, no, I mean, she's the grizzled veteran, if you will,
Yes.
of this team of younger ladies, and they do an awesome job.
I want to get into this, which is such a weird
Yeah, it's
thing.
a weird story.
Quarterfinals.
Yep.
They're celebrating, and a fan gets too excited. This was back when you could really like interact with the athletes, and there wasn't security like there should
We're
have been.
pre 9/11 here,
Yep.
everyone. I think that's the best way to describe it.
And a fan actually dislocates her arm.
Yeah, dislocates her shoulder.
Yeah, her shoulder.
Uh-huh.
And she goes on and plays for the rest of the World Cup with like this injured shoulder. And
That's crazy.
it's crazy because of her style of play.
She's so tough, dude.
You know she's going
just
into
so
every
tough.
50-50 battle. You know she's going into everything. And that's what she was saying about, that's what everybody was saying about this World Cup was she was just like on this mission of like, no, we can't lose.
Yeah, because it's in America, by the way. This
Yep.
one's being played in the United States. I would think that's even a psychological advantage for like the opponents and stuff. It's like, don't mess with her. Even though she has a dislocated shoulder, she's playing.
And dominating.
Yeah, right?
So they win the World Cup. So I just want to say 2 World Cup winner medals, gold medal,
Olympics.
Olympic gold medal. She had 105 goals in throughout her career, and she was the first woman to ever have a shoe deal, a first woman soccer player to ever have a shoe deal. And now I want to get into like post career.
Oh, I just wanted to add
yeah,
one
yeah.
thing. Second leading scorer all
Yep.
time
Behind
in
Mia
U.S.
Hamm.
women's history, who's, they're like 1-2 or 1A, 1B as far as like most legendary type players. But she did not participate in the 2000 Olympics the following year because of all of the injuries she had been sustaining as far as leg and concussions and the weird shoulder situation. So, and that'll come into play as we're talking about kind of post-career, what she's advocating for too.
Well, I want to talk about the day that she decided to retire. They were playing a friendly against like Canada, and she was like trying to get back into the playing shape because her knees were so bad, and she was trying to come back in and play.
Well, she's in her mid-30s.
Yep.
Yeah.
She said the ball went out, and she didn't want the ball to come back in. And when the game ended, she went up to the trainers and she said, "I'm done. That was my last game. I don't have the drive for it anymore."
Yeah.
And that's what she said, was just like, I don't want to like be detrimental to this team. And they were like, "Are you sure?" Because
you're still good.
Yes.
But I mean, it's almost like that's what's so cool about her is she left it all on the field, and she wasn't going to go out there and not be 100% or as close to 100% as possible.
The amount of times that she played and won like these tourneys injured is kind of insane.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, definitely.
So after she retires, she ends up opening up like a horse rescue farm, and she sells almost all of her memorabilia to fund this farm.
That's so cool.
And that was, it was like in the early 2000s, 2010.
Yeah, like for abandoned and abused horses and
Yep.
stuff. I saw some videos on that. It's like, man, what a philanthropy type of thing to do for.
Well, it's interesting to just completely change her life.
Yeah.
She wasn't even into soccer at that point. She wasn't like coaching or helping anybody out. She was literally just like dedicated her life to these horses, and it's pretty amazing.
Oh, definitely. No, I mean, that's just a stand-up person right there.
Yep.
And I had seen some videos on how she's one of the main people advocating for more research into soccer CTE due to the concussion she sustained.
Well, her and Brandy Chastain used to
Yeah.
head the ball. They were the ones that would go up for the headers.
Exactly.
And they were talking about how now in their 50s, they're not sure if they're having effects from CTE, if they're just kind of getting old, and they want this to be really looked into, because you're literally heading the ball like 50 times.
Exactly.
Especially if you're Michelle Akers. She's winning those headers all the time because she's like 4 inches taller than everybody else.
But they're all contested, so you're knocking heads with other people in
Yep.
addition to the ball. Like, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of transpires out of like how much of it is in soccer. Like, you would never think of it as much as hockey or football, but who knows at this point? Like,
Yeah, it's hard
still all
to-
up in the air.
It's hard to say because they say it's the repetitive, getting hit when you have a concussion. So that's what people are
Exactly.
feeling about with Michelle Akers when she played, when she had that concussion, and maybe multiple other times that probably happened.
Where
that
she
was
had
on
a
the-
concussion, but
Yeah.
she didn't feel it like the other more serious ones and
Yep.
just went back out there and played. Yeah, it's really scary thought.
Yeah. Well, you weren't going to keep her off the pitch. That was
No,
one thing that I absolutely love about Michelle Akers. And for me, she was the greatest female soccer player ever with the greatest hairdo.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Thanks, everybody.